Mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cell, making energy for our bodies to function. They take energy from the food that we consume and turn it into energy our body can use. This lesson is on cellular respiration and the energy from organic compounds. So during photosynthesis, electrons and hydrogen ions are chemically bound to carbon dioxide, reducing it to produce glucose molecules. Typically, the equation is C6H12O6. Now, cellular respiration is the reverse of this process, where glucose is oxidized and it loses electrons to carbon dioxide while releasing energy and water. And this energy comes from the breakup of the glucose molecules. So photosynthesis and cellular respiration are complementary processes, where in photosynthesis, we take the input of light energy, combine it with carbon dioxide and water to produce organic molecules and oxygen. And cellular respiration takes organic molecules and oxygen and produces energy and releases carbon dioxide and water. There are three ways of releasing energy stored in food. One is anaerobic cellular respiration, which is carried out by organisms that live in oxic or oxygen containing environments. Anaerobic cellular respiration is carried out by organisms that live in anoxic or no oxygen containing environments. A third pathway for energy release is fermentation, and this is a modified form of anaerobic cellular respiration. So glycolysis occurs in the cytoplasm of a cell. In glycolysis, a glucose molecule is converted into two molecules of pyruvic acid. And in this process, ATP and NADH are also produced. So glucose is converted into two molecules of pyruvic acid, ATP, and NADH. Two ATP are used to change the glucose to fructose diphosphate. That fructose molecule is then split into two molecules of pGal or G3P. Now remember, G3P was the final product of photosynthesis before plants made starches, glucoses, or fructoses. Now that G3 molecules are oxidized, which means they lose an electron, and their electrons are donated to NAD positive to form two NADHs. Finally, the molecules that are converted to pyruvate and four molecules of ATP are produced. So in glycolysis, we have two NADHs produced and four ATP, as well as pyruvic acid. So oxygen is not required for glycolysis, and it occurs in the cytoplasm of cells, not the mitochondria. It produces 4 ATP while consuming 2 ATP for a net outcome of 2 ATP. 2 NADH molecules will also be produced, as well as that pyruvate. Now, pyruvate contains large amounts of chemical energy in its chemical bonds, and if there's no oxygen present, so this is an anoxic environment, that pyruvate would proceed directly to fermentation. But where there is sufficient oxygen, that pyruvate is transferred to the mitochondria to undergo cellular respiration. So pyruvate loses a carbon in the form of carbon dioxide. So this is where carbon dioxide is released in cellular respiration. When this occurs, another molecule of NADH positive is reduced to form NADH. The remaining two carbon atoms from pyruvate attach to a molecule called coenzyme A. So pyruvate forms a two-carbon molecule, attaches to coenzyme A, and this will move into the Krebs cycle. So now the Krebs cycle is again inside the mitochondria. During this cycle, ATP and reduced compounds that have gained electrons are formed. So NADH and FADH2. So the goal of this is to make ATP. So in the Krebs cycle, we release carbon dioxide, we reduce compounds to form NADH and FADH2, and our goal is going to make ATP. So in the Krebs cycle, acetyl-CoA and the two carbons binds with a 4-carbon molecule to form a 6-carbon molecule. So remember that acetyl-CoA dragged in a 2-carbon molecule. That 6-carbon molecule is now going to lose carbon in the form of carbon dioxide and release an electron and a hydrogen atom, and that's going to form NADH from NADH positive. So this compound is going to be reduced and gain an electron. That now 5-carbon molecule is going to lose another carbon dioxide in the form a carbon in the form of carbon dioxide, release another electron to form NADH from NAD positive. So again, this is going to be a reduced molecule. ATP is also formed. So we go from a 6-carbon molecule to a 5-carbon molecule, producing carbon dioxide and NADH. That 5-carbon molecule will go to a 4-carbon molecule to form NADH, ATP, and CO2. Then that 4-carbon molecule is going to be recycled to join on to the acetyl-CoA and 2-carbon molecule that enters the Krebs cycle. That 4-carbon molecule also undergoes a series of changes to release more electrons, allowing the production of one FADH2 molecule from FAD, so 2 hydrogens have been added onto it, and the production of another NADH from NAD positive. But now the 4-carbon molecule is the same as the original molecule, and it will be recycled at the beginning of the Krebs cycle. So now we're going to talk about the electron transport chain. Now, this electron transport chain produces large amounts of ATP during cellular respiration. This is where most of the ATP is produced. So similar to photosynthesis, the high energy electrons are passed down a chain within the mitochondrial membrane. And as the electrons move down the chain, energy is moves, the lost energy is going to move hydrogen across that membrane. So we're going to use that active transport and pump hydrogen out across a cellular membrane to an area where there's a high concentration of hydrogen. That pumping of hydrogen creates a concentration gradient where we have lots of hydrogen outside that is then going to go back down through the ATP synthase channels and produce ATP from adenosine diphosphate, or ADP, in chemiosmosis. And this works the same way that it does in photosynthesis. Whereas hydrogen goes through the ATP synthase channel, ATP is formed. And this is where most of the ATP is formed in cellular respiration. So again, here we have our electron transport chain. As the electron goes down the steps, energy is used to move hydrogen across the cell wall. And as that hydrogen comes back into the cell wall through the ATP synthase channels, ATP is produced. So the electron transport chain requires oxygen in the aerobic respiration. So as those electrons move down the electron transport chain, they eventually reach the final energy acceptor, which is oxygen. So the oxygen is going to be reduced by gaining an electron. It's going to pick up that final hydrogen ion from the bottom of the electron transport chain, and water is going to be produced. So oxygen in cellular respiration is an energy acceptor for a hydrogen ion. So if oxygen isn't present at this final step, it would prevent the electrons from passing the previous electron receptor. So there would be a traffic jam if we're not taking those hydrogens away at the end of the electron transport chain. So we need oxygen to carry away the hydrogen to leave an empty space to be filled by the next hydrogen ion. So each preceding reaction would not be able to take place all the way back to glycolysis. So as our final wrap up, glycolysis produces 4 ATP molecules, while the electron transport system produces a total of 24 ATP molecules. As well, NADH and FADH2 molecules would remain in their reduced forms if we didn't move that oxygen, if that oxygen didn't move the hydrogen ions out at the end of the electron transport chain, unable to receive new electrons, further reducing the amount of energy produced. So the oxygen is a very important component to the cellular respiration cycle. Thanks for joining me to learn about cellular respiration. I'll see you next time.